The definition of a role of a physician is to heal and relieve suffering. However, in the case of physician-assisted suicide, the debate whether a physician is breaching this promise made in the Hippocratic Oath is ongoing and remains controversial. This topic is very important in the world today, as it can either be seen as alleviating pain or ending lives, depending on the viewpoint. The question lies in whether or not it is morally ethical for a physician to assist someone in ending their life, but the answer is so much more complex than a simple yes or no. In the process of forming an opinion on this debate, it is critical to look at the issue from all different perspectives. Opinions about this topic vary throughout different countries, states, religious beliefs, and between opposing moral and ethical standpoints. Personally, I believe that physician-assisted suicide is completely justifiable in cases where a patient is chronically suffering or is terminally ill. While establishing an opinion on this debate, there are many different concepts to comprehend and take into consideration. Firstly, the right of self-determination. This means that a patient is in control of their own life in all regards to their health care. Oftentimes, the argument supporting physician-assisted suicide refers back to the right of self-determination and how each patient should always be able to decide how their last moments are spent. Another issue that surrounds physician-assisted suicide is the fact that death can be defined in a multitude of ways. To some people, death is simply when the heart stops beating. To others, it can be when a person has lost all brain function but is still breathing with the help of a machine. When deciding the morality of physician-assisted suicide, it ultimately depends on how death is characterized by that specific person, and this is what can lead to the fuzzy line between right and wrong. Other key concepts that are relevant to the subject of physician-assisted suicide are the ideas of mercy and beneficence. When a patient is extremely ill and is constantly suffering, it is the duty of the physician to provide all relief possible. In some cases, this does go to the extent of physician-assisted suicide. Another issue that surrounds physician-assisted suicide is the fact that death can be defined in a multitude of ways. To some people, death is simply when the heart stops beating. To others, however, death can happen when a person loses all brain function, even if they can breathe with the help of a ventilator. When deciding the morality of physician-assisted suicide, it ultimately depends on how death is characterized by that specific person, and this is what can lead to the fuzzy line between right and wrong. In the peer-reviewed journal, The Ethical Landscape of Assisted Suicide, A Balanced Analysis, two physicians come together to create an article about their point of view against physician-assisted suicide. The two physicians believe that the medical obligation that doctors provide is completely counteracted by physician-assisted suicide, and that it totally breaks the doctor-patient relationship. They agree that allowing physicians to kill compromises their role to protect life. They continue on by making a point of saying that suffering is just a normal part of life and that it is inevitable in a chronic illness. Those who do not agree with physician-assisted suicide think that it is just too slippery of a slope. They believe that it can be easily abused, which will lead to higher death rates, which is simply unnecessary and dangerous. They say that those who are critically ill and are offered physician-assisted suicide will simply feel that they are not worth being taken care of and will feel devalued. They think that this will cause patients to fear their doctor instead of believe that their intentions are good. When discussing arguments for physician-assisted suicide, again, one must be willing to consider a variety of different points because this argument is a very complex one. In the article, Death and Dignity, A Case of Individualized Decision-Making, by Timothy Quill, the story of a woman named Diane who used physician-assisted suicide was described in detail. Diane was a patient who encountered many obstacles while growing up, but fortunately, she was able to find her way out of all these issues and was finally living a happy and healthy life. Unfortunately, however, Diane was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. She was informed by Quill that technological intervention only had a 1 in 4 chance of curing her. Quill looked at various treatment options and thoroughly explained these to Diane and her husband, but it seemed as though any treatment would be a long and grueling process that had no guarantee of curing her. Quill wanted to start treatment, however, Diane refused, as she stated that she wanted to live her last moments outside of the hospital and choose when she got to end her life. Diane requested barbiturates, which can be used for both sleeping and suicide. Quill ensured that she was thinking clearly and that she had all information possible about these medications, and then he prescribed them for her. Eventually, when Diane knew she was ready, she said her goodbyes and took these medications, and was able to end her suffering just how she preferred. I think Diane's story is just one of many reasons why death with dignity should be approved in all 50 states. She truly knew that her body could not handle what it was going through any longer, so I think there is no reason that she shouldn't be able to have the choice to end her pain permanently. Forcing those with chronic illness to endure their lives, even when they feel as though they don't have a true quality of life, is simply wrong and is not morally permissible. If a patient is mentally competent, has a chronic illness, and simply cannot tolerate their pain any longer, euthanasia should be looked at after considering other alternatives. Though Diane's story was just one example of how physician-assisted suicide provides a cure from endless suffering, there are many other arguments to support this. Back to the idea of the right of self-determination, permitting physician-assisted suicide respects the wishes of a patient. If someone is living through horrible, chronic, debilitating illnesses, who are we to decide that they must keep living through this pain? A prime example of the situation is Brittany Maynard's story. Brittany Maynard was a 29-year-old woman who was just married when she found out that she had an aggressive brain tumor. Brittany had had many surgeries in attempts to remove this tumor. However, she found out that it came back even more aggressively and that she only had 6 months left to live. Brittany's doctors were going to start radiation. However, after extensive research, Brittany concluded that she did not want to go through this horrifying treatment and that she did not want her family to watch her suffer as well. She looked into death with dignity, which she was a candidate for, as she had a terminal illness and less than 6 months left to live. Brittany moved to Oregon, as this was where death with dignity was permissible, but this was a big change for her, as she had to switch residencies and find a new doctor who would agree to this. Here, though, Brittany was finally able to retrieve the medication she needed to end her life when she chose.
I cannot change the fact that I am dying, but I am living my final days to the fullest, spending time with family, friends, and in the great outdoors. And I am preparing to experience the best possible death. Achieving some control over my passing is very important to me. Knowing that I can leave this life with dignity allows me to focus on living. It has provided me enormous peace of mind. The inevitability of death is universal. The widespread support and overwhelmingly positive response to my story represents our community is ready to have a new conversation about death.
Brittany's case is one of the most popular and well-known in regards to physician-assisted suicide. Her touching story proves that nobody should be able to tell anyone else that they must suffer for weeks or even months in severe mental and physical distress. Self-determination includes the right to make decisions for yourself on your own, which is simply why PAS must be allowable. Any person who is in severe chronic pain deserves to have a choice like Brittany had. It is simply not fair for anyone else to tell someone how they must live their last moments. When it comes to chronic illness, the choice of life or death should be decided exclusively by the patient, with the help, support, and numerous options from their physician. By not legalizing physician-assisted suicide throughout the country, we are fundamentally depriving these patients to their right to both self-determination and autonomy. It is pivotal that physicians stand by their patients in retrieving the authorization for this practice. An article written by Dr. Philip Berry called Empathy to Assisted Dying, an Argument, states that in order for physicians to provide proper care to their patients, that they must contain empathy, which means that they have a deep understanding of what their patients are feeling. Patients who can trust that their physician empathizes for their chronic illness leads to a better doctor-patient relationship, and by looking at every option, inclusive of PAS, patients tend to feel a higher sense of control. This counteracts arguments against PAS, which state that doctors who assist in ending their patients' lives instead break the doctor-patient relationship.